Hello everybody, and welcome to my first weekly wrap-up of 2015. I hope you've had a good week. I also hope you've had a good beginning to your new year. Mine has gone pretty well so far, and I have read some good things that I am now going to proceed to talk to you about. The first two things I'm going to talk about are the last two books I read in 2014, and the first of those was The Speed of Dark by Elizabeth Moon. It's the story of a 35-year-old autistic man named Lou Arundel. He works for a company that has an entire division of autistic people that do pattern recognition for them, and the company that he works for acquires a research or an experimental cure that's aimed at curing autism in adult apes. And through the unethical and unscrupulous tactics of a really bad manager, he and the rest of his division of fellow autistic people are kind of forced to volunteer for the experimental human trials of this drug. The story is a very in-depth exploration of what Lou is like, what his life is like as an autistic person. You get to see all aspects of his life through his eyes, in his own voice, how he lives, how he does the same things every same day of the week and stuff like that, the activities that he's involved in, the friends that he has, and then within that you get discussions about what it means to be autistic, what it means to be normal, whether Lou should have this cure for autism because he wants it or because other people and not him want him to be normal. I really enjoyed the first 75% of this book. I really enjoyed getting to see what Lou's life was like. I felt like you just get this really good picture of the kind of person that he is, and he's a really wonderful person. And I can't tell you why I ultimately didn't like the book that much, because it's the ending. I thought the book was leading up to a certain message, a certain ending, and then like in the last 25%, everything just changed and I went, that was not what I was expecting. Now, I don't think that you always have to agree with the endings of books, but there was just something about this particular book and the way it ended. I didn't want that. It made me very sad. It made me wonder if I had misinterpreted the previous 75% of the book, because I really thought it was going in a certain direction and then it didn't. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I really wanted to give it a higher rating because I think it really is one of those books that makes you think hard about yourself and about other people, but I didn't like the ending. The second book I read, and the last book I read in 2014, was Downbelow Station by C.J. Cherryh. For me, I don't know how to explain like the whole backstory. I kind of got dumped into it myself. Technically, the events of Downbelow Station take place like at the end of a whole war and a whole bunch of historical stuff that's been happening. So the book gives you a crash course in that, and it's hard to summarize what's already basically a summary. But the basic story, for me at least, was that a couple of space stations, company space stations, are destroyed by Union. The company fleet dumps like 9,000 refugees on Pell's Station, which is now like one of the last stations that Earth has. And the story is then about how Pell Station, or also called Downbelow Station, is in this tug of war between the company fleet and the Union, because while it has been neutral up until this point, suddenly the war comes smack dab to its front door. It is the boundary. It is the bone that all the sides are fighting about. All the sides that are fighting over are basically like, well, if we can't have it, we'll destroy it. And the people are like, what? There are tens of like thousands of lives there. There are people on the planet below. There's the alien species, the Hisa, who are indigenous to the planet that the space station goes around. I think there are a lot of ethical things you can talk about in this book. I was so furious at the actions of a lot of the military people. I was so worried that something horrible was going to happen to the Hisa, because they're such lovable, peaceful, gentle creatures that just help everyone. They're so kind. And every page that the Hisa were on, I was like, oh, this is when humanity's gonna walk in and screw things up and destroy an entire alien species, and, you know, because that's what we do. I know some people think this book is very long and kind of slow. I never found it to be slow in any parts. In fact, I thought that the book should have been about maybe 100 pages longer than it actually was. I felt that a lot of the writing was too concise. Like, there was so much brevity in this book. I think a lot of it could have been unpacked. I think a lot more explanation could have been inserted to make things flow, to make sure that the reader, you know, me, understands how things are connected, because I was kind of confused in a couple of places. I usually figured things out. That is my only criticism of the book, is that I thought it should have been longer to explain more things. I would have read so much more in this book. But overall, I gave it 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. I so wish that Goodreads would let you do half stars, because it's a very high 4 stars. I would have given it 4.5 if I could. Story and the characters, it's just, it felt really realistic. And sometimes science fiction, even though it's science fiction, doesn't seem that realistic to me. But there was just the way that people acted, the politics, the agendas, the war in this just felt like something that would really happen, which is both terrifying and sad at the same time. The third and final book I finished this week is City of Stairs by Robert Jackson Bennett. This is from my list of science fiction and fantasy books I want to read in 2015. I'm trying to get a jump start on that list. This particular book was okay. I really wanted to like it more. There were parts, especially after the halfway point, where I started to get much more interested in what was going on. Ultimately, I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I thought the world building was really great. I think that Bennett did a fantastic job creating a lot of history and documents and things to draw on to make the story richer. But I didn't like Shara. I didn't like the main character, and I don't really know how to explain why. It's even I'm not sure exactly why I don't like her. She does change throughout the book. She becomes a bit more likable near the end, but for the most part, I was just like, I didn't really care for her personality or her motivations for doing things, and I wasn't that big of a fan of her assistant, Sigrud. He was just kind of the Hulk smash character until the very end, and I don't always appreciate that kind of character, I guess. So I feel like this book is more like a murder mystery wrapped in a fantasy setting, because the plot is very much murder mystery, and I enjoy that aspect of it. I'm glad I read it, because it was an entertaining story, but it was not the best fantasy story I've ever read. So that is everything that I read in the past week. It was pretty good. It was a lot of interesting, thought-provoking stuff. I am currently reading The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas on my Kindle. Okay, this was my big chunker of a classic for 2015, only I didn't realize how much of a big chunker it actually is. I thought it was around 800 pages. It's 1,276 pages. So I thought I should get a start on that now, and I'm really enjoying it. It is a very interesting book. I know the basic story, so I kind of know what's happening, and I'm like, oh yeah, we're getting to the good part. So I'm going to really enjoy this particular classic, I think. I am also reading Waistcoats and Weaponry by Gail Carriger. This is the 3rd book in the Finishing School series. It is not the best YA in the world, but it is super, super fun. And here's a question for you guys. How do you pronounce that word? Is it waistcoat or waistcoat? I have heard both pronunciations. When I say the title of this book, I want to say Waistcoats and Weaponry because that's alliterative, but I have this feeling I am saying it wrong, so let me know how you would say that. This is troubling me for some reason. I'm not going to do a January TBR. I've decided that I'm not really interested in doing monthly TBRs because I did my December experimental one, and it went okay until about halfway through the month when I started to feel really pressured to only read things from the list of books that I had kind of set for myself, and I felt like I was forcing myself to read those books instead of the books that suddenly I really was more interested in reading, and I could just see that being a recipe for not fun reading in the future. So I think I will just tell you guys what I am currently reading, what I am looking to read in the coming week when I do my weekly wrap-ups, if that works for you guys. But since I do have some kind of plans for January, I'm going to mention some books really briefly. The first is Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen. I will probably start reading this book like in the second week of January after I have finished some other things I'm working on. The second book is The Shadow of the Wind by Ruiz Zafon. I'm going to be reading this with my friend Rachel, and we're probably going to start reading that around January 15th. I picked the book, she picked the time. Then there are a couple of other books I currently have out from the library that absolutely, yes, I will be reading, and they are Mirror Dance by Lois McMaster Bujold, the next book in the Vorkosigan saga, The Three-Body Problem by Cixin Liu, and Swordspoint by Ellen Kushner. And yeah, that is pretty much it for me today. Those are the things that I read in the past week. That's what I'm currently reading. That's what I'm looking forward to reading the most in January. If you're interested in any of these books, please comment down below and let me know. And I'm not entirely sure what my plans are going to be for this coming week. I have filmed my review of This Immortal by Roger Zelazny, which should probably be going up on Tuesday. We will see how that goes, and I will talk to you again in my next video. Bye. I'm drinking a lot of tea while I'm filming this because I'm not awake yet.